In a vast galaxy riddled with war and shadowed by dark conspiracies, the once peaceful and prosperous planet of Luminar now teeters on the edge of annihilation. As the brutal Vex Empire marches forward, threatening to erase everything Luminar has built, only one desperate option remains: an urgent plea to Earth. But Earth, an overlooked, underestimated world, now faces a decision that could alter the fate of the galaxy. With other cosmic powers remaining silent, will humanity rise from obscurity to become a protector of innocent lives? Will they confront the darkness and prove that even a forgotten planet can change the course of history? Subscribe now to follow this thrilling and emotional story of courage, sacrifice, and the moment humanity steps into the light. Don't miss what happens next. In the vast expanse of the cosmos, the planet Luminar was once known as a jewel among the stars. With its crystalline towers stretching toward the heavens and its floating gardens suspended in mid-air, it stood as a radiant symbol of peace and prosperity. But now, all of that had become a fading memory, obscured by clouds of fire and smoke, drowned beneath the relentless assault of the Vex Coalition. Explosions echoed across the sky like drums of doom, shaking the once glorious capital city to its very foundations. The once sparkling crystal towers were now scorched ruins, their spires shattered and blackened. Fierce flames painted the skies red, blotting out the once serene light and erasing all signs of the civilization that once thrived here. The people of Luminar, beings who had lived in tranquility for countless generations now, found themselves plunged into a nightmare beyond imagining. Ambassador Tella stood within the dim confines of the emergency communication chamber, the flickering lights casting pale reflections across her turquoise skin. Each distant detonation outside throbbed like a heartbeat of grief within her chest, but she refused to let fear take over. Tella knew that in this moment, she was no longer just a leader, she was the last hope of the Luminar people. "Is it ready?" she asked, her voice hoarse from tension. She turned to the technician beside her, whose trembling hands worked feverishly over the console. He nodded, exhaustion written in the lines of his face, yet a faint glimmer of hope shone in his eyes. "Yes, Ambassador. The signal is primed for transmission. We estimate it will reach Earth in approximately 6 hours." His voice faltered for a moment before he continued. "If they respond immediately, reinforcements could arrive within 2 weeks." Tella clenched her fists at her sides, her heart caught between despair and determination. "Earth," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. "Will they really answer us?" The question hung in the air like smoke. The humans were still a mystery, friendly, yes, but distant. Observers, not warriors. And yet, there was no alternative. Without Earth's intervention, Luminar would fall. The Vex would raze everything to ash, leaving nothing but silence behind. When the signal was finally sent, it radiated outward in a trembling pulse of desperation. It pierced through the atmosphere of Luminar, fleeing from the chaos below and reaching into the deep void of space toward a distant, unfamiliar world known only in diplomatic records and cautious speculation. Earth. Would the message be heard? Would this far-off planet, so young and unpredictable, respond to the call of a dying civilization? Tella didn't know. But she understood one thing with unwavering clarity: this was their only chance. She stepped toward the narrow window slit, gazing out at the horizon. Fires danced across the cityscape like serpents of judgment, devouring the towers and gardens once hailed as architectural marvels. The streets below were empty, ghostly reminders of what once had been a place of music, laughter, and dreams. And now, silence. The legacy of the Luminar people, 10,000 years of culture, philosophy, harmony teetered on the brink of extinction. Yet it was in this very abyss that something profound emerged, the birth of hope. Fragile, trembling, and as luminous as the last star in a collapsing sky. Outside, the flames roared louder, devouring what little remained. Smoke curled upward, veiling the heavens. The world Tella had sworn to protect was crumbling. And yet, even as the ground trembled and the future darkened, she whispered a prayer not to a deity, but to destiny. "Let them hear us." The technician lowered his hands from the control panel, the final transmission complete. The chamber fell into an eerie stillness, broken only by the rumble of distant destruction. Somewhere beyond the stars, the signal raced on, carrying with it the soul of a people crying out for deliverance. Tella closed her eyes for a moment, summoning strength from the deepest parts of her spirit. She remembered the faces of her people, the elders in their quiet wisdom, the children in their boundless curiosity, the artists, the healers, the dreamers. Were they still alive? Were they hiding? Fighting? Dying? There was no way to know. But there was one truth she could cling to. As long as the signal traveled, there was still a thread of hope. And sometimes, all it takes is a single thread to weave a miracle. The Vex would not stop. They were not conquerors. They were annihilators. They moved like a plague, leaving ruin in their wake. But perhaps Earth was different. Perhaps the humans, with their unpredictable nature and violent history, held within them a kind of fire that the Vex had never faced before. A fire born not of destruction but of defiance. If the humans responded, if they arrived in time, Luminar might yet survive. And so, in the heart of the fading city, Ambassador Tella stood alone in the shadow of a dying world, staring into the abyss beyond the glass, her voice silent, but her soul crying out into the stars. Somewhere out there, perhaps even at this very moment, a human hand might be reaching for that signal. A leader might be reading the plea. A ship might be preparing for launch. And maybe, just maybe, salvation was already on its way. Thousands of light years away, deep beneath the surface of Earth, a secure underground facility buzzed with tension. In the emergency coordination room of the Earth Federation, a distress signal had just been received that would shake the foundations of interstellar diplomacy. It was a direct transmission from the Luminar system, from none other than Ambassador Tella herself. The air in the room grew heavy with urgency. A communications officer sprang to his feet, eyes wide with alarm as he clutched the incoming message. "Admiral, we have a priority signal from the Luminar system," he called out, his voice strained. "It's from Ambassador Tella." The room fell silent as the holographic display lit up. On the screen, Ambassador Tella appeared, her face weary, but her voice firm. She spoke with desperation wrapped in dignity. "We need immediate assistance, Earth. If not, our planet will be destroyed. The Vex have taken 3 of our 5 worlds. They will not stop. We are out of time." When the message ended, silence reclaimed the room. Admiral Reed stood motionless at the command table, his hand resting heavily on its edge. A tall, imposing man, with deep brown skin and streaks of silver in his short-cropped hair. Reed had seen the worst of wars, but this was different. The burden of the moment was visible in the tightness of his jaw and the fire in his eyes. 3 years ago, Earth had never heard of Luminar. Now, they were being called upon as the last hope of an ancient civilization. "Get the President and the National Security Council on the line," Reed said, his voice calm but commanding. "Activate the 7th Fleet. I want full deployment readiness." Commander Wilson, a sharp-minded officer with a youthful face, stepped forward in disbelief. "Sir, the 7th Fleet? That's our most powerful force. No one in the Galactic Assembly even knows it exists. Are you sure this is the time to reveal our true strength?" Reed turned toward him, eyes like steel. "Because this is the moment we decide who we are. We cannot stand by while an entire civilization is annihilated. If we do nothing, the Vex will see us as weakened. We might be next." His tone was resolute. "We were not invited into this galaxy to watch. We were brought in to act." Wilson held his breath, then nodded. The decision had been made. Earth would not ignore this plea. It wasn't just a matter of compassion, it was a matter of survival. Within minutes, emergency sessions were convened across government branches. Strategic plans were drafted. Orders were encrypted and dispatched. "We need diplomatic cover," Reed continued. "We'll frame it as a humanitarian effort to relieve ships, medical teams. No one must know what travels in their shadow." Behind the scenes, the military might of Earth roared into motion. The official convoys were fitted with medical bays, food supplies, and peace banners. But hidden behind those beacons of aid was something far more formidable. Earth's hidden Sordan elite battle fleet of unmatched firepower, unseen by any other race. Meanwhile, at the Galactic Assembly, the chambers swelled with tension. Representatives from over 200 species gathered in a spiral of tiered seating, arguing over the crisis unfolding on Luminar. The Assembly's decision was clear: no military intervention. They deemed it a localized conflict, unfortunate, but not their responsibility. Ambassador Thomas of Earth stepped up to the central podium. For 3 years, he had presented Earth as a peaceful, curious, and diplomatic member of the interstellar community. But today, that mask would be tested. Earth respects the decisions of the Assembly, he began, his voice calm, gentle, almost apologetic. However, we cannot stand idle while millions face extermination. We will dispatch humanitarian aid and medical support immediately to Luminar. Whispers broke out across the chamber. The tone was diplomatic, but the implication was not lost on anyone. Then, a delegate from the Vex Collective rose tall, humanoid, with iridescent scales rippling across his body. His eyes gleamed with disdain. "You are newcomers to this galaxy," he hissed. "Weaklings from a backwater world. Luminar refused to share their technologies with us. Now they reap what they sow. We will not permit your interference." Thomas met the alien's gaze and smiled faintly, his expression cold. "We respect your concerns, but Earth also reserves the right to protect innocent lives. If you choose to strike, know that we will respond." The words hung in the air like a blade drawn from its sheath. The chamber fell silent. That single moment changed everything. No longer were humans seen as naive, fragile beings clinging to the edge of the galaxy. In that instant, Earth had revealed a new face, measured, merciful, but not afraid. The myth of weakness had shattered. Back on Earth, preparations for deployment accelerated. The Seventh Fleet, hidden for decades beneath classified silos and black-budget spaceports, emerged into the light of operational readiness. Sleek vessels bearing no insignias moved into formation. Stealth cruisers, deep space carriers, and battle-hardened destroyers stood ready to jump. Admiral Reed watched from the command deck as massive ships hummed to life. Around him, the operations center bustled with activity, screens flashing with hyperspace coordinates and fleet configurations. "This isn't just about Luminar," Reed murmured, mostly to himself. "It's about the galaxy knowing who we are and what happens when you push Earth too far." His aides remained silent, understanding the weight of those words. For Luminar, the hope of survival now depended on ships they had never seen, from warriors they barely knew. But behind that uncertainty was something powerful: Earth's choice to act, not for conquest, not for glory, but because, in the face of silence from the galaxy, someone had to answer the call. And Earth had answered. The countdown to departure began. Engines surged, coordinates locked. And within hours, the blackness of space would ripple as Earth's most powerful fleet leapt across the star-stored, a world in flames and a destiny no one had foreseen. 2 weeks later, Earth's Seventh Fleet emerged at the edge of the Luminar system. Cloaked in stealth technology, the fleet remained completely undetected, silently watching the chaos unfold below. Earth Hans, a world overlooked by the greater galactic civilizations, had not come to merely offer aid. It had come to reshape the balance of power in the stars. Admiral Reed stood on the command bridge of the Leviathan, the largest and most advanced warship in Earth's armada. Though the pressure of the upcoming military operation known that could alter the fate of the galaxy was immense, Reed remained composed. Only the piercing sharpness in his eyes betrayed the fierce determination burning within him. He was the kind of leader who never let emotion cloud his judgment. "The Seventh Fleet is combat ready, sir," reported a young officer, eyes locked on a flickering control panel. "The aid ships are launching as planned." Reed gave a brief nod but didn't respond immediately. His gaze was fixed on the main screen, which displayed the burning planets of Luminar shattered by Vex occupation. He turned to his command team and spoke with steady authority. "This is not just a rescue mission. This is our moment to redefine how the galaxy sees Earth. We won't just save Luminar, we're going to teach the Vex a lesson they'll never forget. They thought we were weak, primitive. Today, they'll understand who we truly are." At his order, Earth's relief vessels laden with medical teams and humanitarian supplies departed the warships and headed toward the ravaged planets. They moved slowly, their hulls marked with symbols of peace. But behind them came the shadow, the stealth fleet of Earth, each warship a silent titan of destruction. The Vex Coalition had anticipated unarmed ships, easy targets. What they received was a revelation of power they hadn't imagined. Earth's warships attacked with terrifying precision, their strategies honed through centuries of survival on a death world. The Vex outnumbered the humans, but numbers were irrelevant when the battlefield belonged to genius. Earth's fighters moved with blistering speed, dodging, striking, vanishing like ghosts. The Vex commanders, unaccustomed to such fluid warfare, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Earth's ships didn't just fight, they danced. They bent the rules of engagement, appearing from blind spots, deploying tactics that the Vex couldn't begin to comprehend. What the Vex didn't realize was that Earth's strength wasn't just technological, it was evolutionary. Humanity had been forged in storms, plagues, wars, and cataclysms. They didn't fear annihilation, they adapted to it. Their pilots flew like predators. Their warships acted like organisms, reactive, coordinated, precise. The Vex were stunned. Their ranks crumbled faster than they could regroup. Earth's fleet struck like thunderclaps from a hidden storm, each blow shattering more than metal. It shattered the myth of Vex superiority. It shattered their belief that Earth was harmless. From the command deck of the Leviathan, Admiral Reed watched the tide turn. "This is it," he muttered. "This is the moment everything changes." Across the battlefield, ship after ship from the Vex side erupted in fire. Their formations fell apart. Reports streamed in. "Enemy vessels retreating, sir," an officer announced. "Several have been neutralized." "Don't let them escape," Reed commanded, voice sharp. "They misjudged us. Now we make sure they never forget." The assault intensified. Earth's ships pierced through the heart of the Vex fleet, carving paths of destruction with eerie precision. Their lasers didn't just destroy, they dissected. Their missiles didn't miss. Entire sectors of the enemy line collapsed under synchronized barrages. Even the most elite Vex squadrons found themselves helpless. Their systems couldn't track the speed. Their AI couldn't predict the maneuvers. Their soldiers began to panic. Within hours, the battlefield had shifted entirely. What was once a galaxy's forgotten backwater world was now the architect of a decisive, elegant, and overwhelming victory. And it wasn't just the weapons. It was the message. The galaxy was watching. Somewhere, transmissions were being intercepted. Rumors would spread. Whispers would grow. Earth is not what we thought. This wasn't just a military triumph, it was a symbolic reckoning. Earth had proven that it was not merely a green planet of peace, but a crucible of survival. It had not been forged in laboratories and glass towers, but in fire, desperation, and genius. And that made it dangerous, powerful, respected. On the battlefield, Earth didn't boast. It didn't shout. It acted. Humanity had always been underestimated, even by itself. But when faced with extinction, it didn't collapse, it calculated. It didn't flee, it evolved. And now, the entire galaxy was forced to reckon with what they had ignored for too long. As the last of the Vex fleet began to scatter, retreating in disarray, the Leviathan remained poised like a silent sentinel above the scorched moons of Luminar. Admiral Reed lowered his hands from the console and looked across the bridge. "We came here to save lives," he said quietly, "but we've also saved our place in this galaxy." He knew what would follow. Diplomats would scramble. The Galactic Assembly would demand answers. Accusations would fly. But none of it could change the truth of what had happened today. Earth had risen. In the days that followed, the full scope of the victory came into focus. Luminar's people were rescued. Their cities stabilized. Aid poured in under the protection of Earth's hovering ships. Wounded were treated. Children were fed. Entire settlements were rebuilt beneath banners bearing Earth's crest. But the greater impact couldn't be measured in logistics or recovery statistics. It was seen in the way other species now looked at human soldiers with awe, not pity. It was whispered in the corridors of power. Perhaps Earth is ready to lead. Even the Galactic Assembly, once so quick to dismiss Earth, began to shift its tone. Delegations requested meetings. Treaties were quietly reviewed. Embassies sent coded messages of interest. And the Vex? They went silent. No retaliation came. No formal declaration, only fear and silence. Because the Vex, in their arrogance, had revealed themselves as aggressors and Earth had answered with mercy and fire. In Luminar, murals were painted to honor the humans. Songs were written of the black ships that appeared in the sky like guardian spirits. Children in the ruined cities ran through the streets pretending to pilot Earth's starfighters. Ambassador Tella, recovering from the devastation of her world, stood with Admiral Reed beneath the twin suns of her home planet and whispered, "You didn't just save us, you changed everything." Reed didn't answer. He didn't need to. Because from this day forward, the galaxy would never again speak of Earth as a minor planet on the edge of the stars. It would speak of Earth as a force, as a shield, and as a warning. For those who bring destruction, be prepared. Because somewhere in the silence of space, Earth is watching, and if you cry out, it will answer. Not with words, but with a fleet. With victory secured and the Vex Coalition in full retreat, the atmosphere aboard the Leviathan's command deck was tighter than ever. Admiral Reed remained silent, his gaze locked on the tactical display where Earth's fleet now held full control. The battlefield, once a storm of chaos, had become a stage of dominance. But the battle was never just about victory. Woven into its outcome was a revelation known that no one had anticipated, and few were ready for. In the auxiliary command centers across the fleet, officers reported that the Vex Armada had been thoroughly dismantled. Still, a more critical mission loomed, the unveiling of Earth's true strength. With the enemy retreating, Earth could no longer keep its arsenal in the shadows. This wasn't just a military operation, it was the turning point in a galactic strategy that would forever redefine humanity's place in the stars. Reed turned to face his command team, the weight of history in his eyes. "We did not fight only for Luminar," he declared with calm resolve. "We fought for ourselves, for everything we've kept hidden for the past 3 years. Prepare for full disclosure. The Galactic Assembly will never see Earth the same way again." The secret Reed referred to was no small one. For years, Earth had carefully concealed the true extent of its military evolution. Under the guise of peaceful integration into the Galactic Assembly, humanity had quietly built one of the most advanced fleets in the quadrant. The strategy had been deliberate. Observe, learn, adapt and wait. But now, with the smoldering remnants of the Vex fleet as witness, the masquerade was over. Elsewhere, the news of Earth's victory spread like wildfire. On planets across the galaxy, from the icy caverns of Talakor to the floating citadels of Seraphine, the name Earth surged to the forefront of interstellar discourse. What had once been considered a minor backwater planet had just dismantled one of the most feared military powers in known space. The Galactic Assembly, stunned by the sudden shift in power, convened an emergency session. Within the Grand Chambera, spiraling sanctuary of glass, stone, and light ambassadors from over 200 species gathered, the air thick with unease. At the center stood Earth's representative, Ambassador Thomas. He knew this would be a reckoning. Delegates whispered, gestured, and shouted. Holoscreens replayed footage of Earth's stealth destroyers phasing in and out of combat. Tactical overlays revealed formations and maneuvers never seen before. To many, it was an act of deception. To others, it was the emergence of a force the galaxy could no longer ignore. A delegate from the insectoid world of Jor rose to speak, his long limbs clicking against the floor, his voice sharp and accusatory. "What has Earth hidden from us?" he demanded, his compound eyes flashing with rage. "You have deceived this council. You pretended to be weak. You are liars." He pointed a clawed finger at Thomas, as if indicting all of humanity with that one gesture. Thomas stood slowly, his expression calm but his words edged with undeniable authority. "We have never lied," he said. "We simply did not see the need to reveal everything about ourselves. Earth seeks peace, but peace cannot survive without the strength to defend it." A hush fell over the chamber. The simplicity of the statement struck a chord. Even among the most advanced civilizations, peace was often a luxury forged by centuries of bloodshed. Earth, it seemed, had merely followed the same path, only faster and in silence. A representative from Iridian, a desert planet of scholars and tacticians, spoke next. "We judged Earth wrongly," he admitted. "We mistook restraint for weakness. But what we saw in the Luminar system was not just power, it was brilliance. Tactical coordination unlike anything we've encountered." The mood shifted. The outrage of some gave way to reflection in others, and while distrust lingered, a new respect had taken root. Still, not everyone was pleased. In the shadows of the chamber, members of the Vex delegation remained silent. Their leader had not appeared. Whether out of shame, strategy, or fear, their absence only deepened the sense of Earth's ascendancy. Back aboard the Leviathan, Admiral Reed stood before a massive viewport overlooking the scorched remnants of the battlefield. Reports flowed in. All major Vex warships had either been destroyed or had retreated beyond the system's edge. Luminar's population centers, though battered, were being stabilized by Earth's medical teams. The worst had passed. Now came the message. "Prepare the transmission," Reed ordered. "It's time." Within moments, Earth's official declaration was dispatched to every major civilization in the assembly. A full disclosure of its fleet capabilities, its military doctrine, and the existence of the hidden Seventh Fleet. It was not a threat. It was not a boast. It was a statement of truth delivered, not with arrogance, but with finality. Earth had arrived. The implications were staggering. Other civilizations now had to reassess not just Earth, but the very structure of galactic diplomacy. A new variable had entered the equation, unpredictable, formidable, and perhaps most terrifyingly, human. Because Earth had not become powerful through conquest or colonialism. It had grown strong through struggle, through survival. Its people had faced extinction, countless times wars, plagues, climate collapse, and emerged with a mindset not of dominance, but of endurance. They were not designed for peace. They were forged for resistance. And that resistance now bore fruit in the stars. Ambassador Thomas returned from the assembly to find a changed galaxy. Requests for alliances flooded in, invitations to defense councils, proposals for joint operations. Some were sincere. Others were laced with suspicion. But all carried the same message. Earth was no longer irrelevant. On Luminar, Admiral Reed stood beside Ambassador Tella on the steps of the rebuilt Capitol spire. Around them, Luminarian citizens gathered to honor the foreign soldiers who had saved them from extinction. "You understand what you've done, don't you?" Tella said softly. "This wasn't just a battle. It was a revelation. You've unmasked yourselves before the stars." Reed nodded. "We knew it couldn't last forever. Peace kept us hidden, but survival required truth." "Do you regret it?" "No," Reed said, "because now they'll never mistake our silence for weakness again." And indeed, from that moment forward, Earth's silence became a different kind of power. For in the galactic memory, the name Earth no longer conjured images of blue oceans and quiet diplomacy. It evoked visions of ghost ships streaking through space, of enemies scattering under the roar of an invisible fleet, of a planet once underestimated, now forever recognized. From the ashes of Luminar, a new narrative was born. Humanity had not come to take. They had come to protect. But if pushed, they would fight. And when they fought, they would win. When the Vex Coalition realized that Earth had not only sent humanitarian aid, but was also deploying a formidable military force, everything changed. The war was no longer a simple clash between the strong and the weak. It became a contest of minds, where every tactical maneuver could shift the course of history. Aboard the Leviathan, Admiral Reed stood on the command bridge, eyes fixed on the tactical display. Earth's Seventh Fleet had taken up strategic positions. Every vessel, from the massive dreadnoughts to the agile strike cruisers, was locked and ready. From the lowest-ranking ensigns to the highest-ranking admirals, each officer understood that this battle was not only about Luminar's survival, it was a message to the entire galaxy. Earth was not a planet to be underestimated. "Open secure comms to all fleet captains," Reed ordered. "Initiate Operation Hydra." Operation Hydra was Earth's most advanced military maneuver strategy, designed and perfected over the last 3 years to combat larger and more technologically superior enemies. At its core, it emphasized agility, unpredictability, and synchronized execution. It was everything the Vex weren't prepared for. Each Earth ship had been custom-built for this doctrine: rapid direction changes, multi-vector thrust systems, and AI-driven targeting algorithms. The result? A fleet that moved like shadows, untouchable, untraceable, and lethal. Using simultaneous offensive and defensive tactics, Earth's fleet split the Vex armada into smaller, scattered clusters. Without unified formations, the Vex lost the ability to concentrate firepower. Earth's warships moved like ghosts, striking weak points with surgical precision and vanishing before retaliation could begin. Their long-range artillery systems were so accurate that Vex ships exploded before their sensors even registered a threat. But this battle wasn't fought only in space, it was fought inside the minds of the enemy. Reed and his command staff anticipated Vex reactions before they occurred. Psychological operations, feints, and deception flooded the battlefield. False energy signatures lured Vex squadrons into ambushes. Tactical misdirection convinced enemy commanders they had found weak points, only to discover they had walked straight into traps. At one hotspot in the conflict zone, Vex forces concentrated all firepower on what appeared to be Earth's vulnerable flank. Instead, it was a decoy. The real strike force had flanked them from an entirely different vector, hitting supply carriers and command ships. Within minutes, the Vex were in chaos. Their lines collapsed, their cohesion shattered. "Status report," a bridge officer said, eyes on the flickering hologram. "The Vex are fractured, Admiral," she continued. "Their forces can't regroup. They're overwhelmed by the pace and coordination of our attack." Reed nodded, expression grim. "No mercy. Disrupt any attempt at reformation. Don't let them regain momentum." As the Vex spiraled further into disarray, a specialized Earth task force, the Black Hawks, was deployed on the ground. These elite operatives weren't just hardened veterans. They were masters of unconventional warfare, trained for planetary incursions under extreme conditions. Moving with precision and speed, the Black Hawks descended into occupied Luminar cities. They executed rapid urban strikes, rescuing civilians and eliminating Vex command posts with ghost-like efficiency. Locals described them as shadow-silent, relentless, and nearly invisible. Where the Vex once ruled, the Black Hawks reclaimed control, one district at a time. Earth's dominance wasn't built solely on firepower. It was engineered into every detail, every unit, every movement. Victory was forged through discipline, innovation, and adaptability. Reed's strategies maximized each ship and soldier's unique strengths, ensuring that even the smallest Earth vessel or infantry squad could turn the tide of a skirmish. And the Vex? They panicked. Desperation set in. Commanders issued conflicting orders. Squadrons broke formation. Earth didn't just defeat them militarily, it broke their will to fight. The Vex, long feared as one of the galaxy's most efficient military machines, were unraveling. Back on the Leviathan, the command staff monitored the chaos. "They're scattering," one officer confirmed. "They've lost tactical integrity." Reed remained composed, though he knew this wasn't the end. "They're still dangerous. Pursue and neutralize. No second chances." At Vex High Command, panic erupted. Overlord Kra, ruler of the Vex Coalition, stared in disbelief at the deteriorating battle map. His once mighty fleet, said to be invincible, was burning across a dozen screens. Explosions dotted the tactical display like death blooming in every quadrant. "How is this happening?" Kra roared. "They're humans. They were supposed to be primitive." His war chief, General Vosh, stood silent, eyes narrowed. "They're not primitive," he said finally. "They're calculating, fast, adaptive." Kra turned to him, eyes wide with rage. Vosh continued more quietly now. "They strike like they've fought extinction, like they've faced worse than us." And he was right. Humanity hadn't grown strong in utopia. Earth was a crucible of natural disasters, internal conflict, and constant survival against odds. What other civilizations evolved in harmony, humanity evolved in adversity. And that adversity had created minds that fought like fire spreading, unpredictable, and impossible to contain. Earth's forces pushed the advantage further. Stealth drones infiltrated Vex communication relays. Cybernetic viruses crashed targeting systems. Ion bombs disabled defensive grids. What should have been a war of attrition became a war of surgical dismantling. On Luminar's surface, Black Hawk operatives transmitted live feeds of liberated cities. Children ran to safety. Medical tents unfolded. Citizens cheered beneath banners bearing the crest of Earth. In orbit, Earth ships held formation, unmoving, watchful, prepared for any counterattack that never came. Because the Vex had lost more than ships, they had lost confidence. They had been outthought, outmaneuvered, outfought. In that moment, Earth ceased to be an emerging power. It became the standard. The battle dragged on for several more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Earth's strategic brilliance and unified command structure gave no room for error and no quarter for hesitation. Every last Vex ship in system was destroyed or captured. As the battlefield fell silent, Reed finally allowed himself a breath, not a sigh of relief, but a measured inhale. He knew the next war would not be one of weapons but of words, politics, alliances, and fear. Transmit a clear message to all systems, he ordered. Victory is ours. Luminar is free. Earth stands ready to protect peace. And the stars would hear it. From the ashes of what should have been their defeat, humanity had risen again and again. But now, the galaxy knew the truth. Earth didn't win because it was stronger. It won because it was smarter. Because it refused to fight the enemy's war and instead rewrote the rules of engagement. And in doing so, Earth didn't just win a battle, it changed the nature of war itself. As the battle in the Luminar system came to an end, the atmosphere within the Galactic Assembly grew tense and suffocating. Delegates from hundreds of civilizations sat in stunned silence, unsure how to react to Earth's dramatic emergence as a dominant power. The once dismissed planet from the outer spiral arm had just dismantled one of the most feared militaries in the galaxy. Earth humanity was no longer a footnote in galactic politics. It was now a force that could no longer be ignored. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly, beneath its gleaming archways and suspended planetary orbs, leaders gathered to debate what none could deny. Earth's military capabilities were no longer theoretical. They were proven, and the galaxy had watched. Earth's ambassador, Thomas, ascended the central podium with his usual calm demeanor. His voice, though gentle, carried a quiet authority that now carried new weight among the assembly. "We did not seek conflict," Thomas began, his voice echoing across the marble hall. "But when innocent lives are threatened, when life and death are determined by those with power, Earth will not stand by. We fight for the survival of those like Luminar, who cannot defend themselves against forces like the Vex." There was a murmur among the rows of alien dignitaries. Most listened in silence, but not all were convinced. The delegate from Jorah, towering insectoid being with crystalline mandibles, stood abruptly, his tone seething with outrage. "You deceived us!" he shouted, his antennae flaring with fury. "For 3 years, you portrayed yourselves as fragile, naive. But now we see your true nature, an armed power capable of destruction, hiding behind words of peace." He jabbed a clawed finger toward Ambassador Thomas in accusation. But Thomas did not flinch. He exhaled slowly, then met the delegate's gaze. "We have never lied," he replied evenly. "We simply didn't see the need to reveal all of ourselves. Earth has always sought peace, but peace cannot exist without the will and strength to defend it when it is threatened." For a moment, there was silence. And then something changed. From across the chamber, another voice rose. The delegate from Iridian, a desert world known for its scholars and strategists, stood. His tone was no longer skeptical but respectful. "Perhaps we judged Earth too quickly," he said. "Had they not intervened, Luminar would have fallen. They didn't seek conquest. They defended a civilization that had no other hope, and they did so decisively." More murmurs followed, but this time they were tinged with agreement. Doubts were melting into admiration. A delegate from the Novan Systema cluster of planets, known for their neutrality, rose next. "We cannot continue to assess Earth by their words alone. Their actions speak volumes. They have shown that their strength serves their principles, not their ambition. Thomas nodded slightly, letting the words settle without interruption. He understood what was happening. This was more than a military victory, it was a diplomatic shift. Earth was not only rising in power, but in perception. No longer was it the quiet observer in assembly debates. It was now the proven protector of the innocent. Thomas had said nothing boastful, nothing threatening, and that was precisely what made Earth's position even more powerful. Its strength was not just measured in ships and strategy, but in restraint. The revelation of Earth's true power had stirred not only fear, but reflection. "We were wrong to believe Earth was weak," came another voice, this time from Zorax, one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. "Now we understand. They concealed their military capabilities not out of fear, but out of commitment to peace." Even former enemies of Earth, including Vex-aligned factions, were forced to acknowledge what had happened. Their silence in the chamber said it all. Earth had not just beaten them, it had done so with dignity. As the final words echoed across the assembly, every gaze turned back to Thomas. He said nothing more. He didn't need to. The battlefield had already spoken. And the silence of a humble ambassador now roared louder than any weapon ever could. The session drew to a close with a single historic resolution. For the first time in the Galactic Assembly's recorded history, a planet previously regarded as minor, non-strategic, and diplomatically unremarkable was unanimously recognized as a major military and strategic power. Earth's status was officially elevated. No longer was it just a planet of thinkers, dreamers, and diplomats. It was now classified as a protector state capable, willing, and authorized to intervene when innocent civilizations were under threat. It was a new chapter, not only for Earth, but for the Assembly itself. And it had begun not through conquest, but through a single, unshakable truth. That true strength does not announce itself. It reveals itself only when the time is right. As delegates exited the hall, many paused to shake Thomas's hand or offer a nod of respect. Others left in silent contemplation, evaluating their alliances, their assumptions, and the quiet planet they once overlooked. Meanwhile, on Luminar, celebrations erupted across the rebuilt cities. Statues were erected in honor of Earth's fallen. Luminarian children painted murals of the black ships that descended from the stars. A new alliance was born not of politics, but of trust. Back on the Leviathan, Admiral Reed received word of the Assembly's decision. He said nothing at first, only watching the stars through the panoramic viewport. Then, he smiled, faintly. "They finally see us," he murmured, "not as a threat, but as something stronger. A guardian," one of his officers replied. Reed nodded. "Yes, and let's hope we never have to prove it again." But if they did, the galaxy now knew. Earth would answer. And when it did, it would not hesitate. A week after Earth's resounding victory in the Luminar system, the atmosphere within the Galactic Assembly had shifted completely. The days of heated arguments and political turmoil gave way to an almost uneasy silence. Across Luminar, 3 of its once thriving planets lay in ruins, but signs of rebirth were already visible. The war was over, yet what remained in its wake carried far more meaning than any single victory. Earth had not merely fought to save. Luminaret had fought for its place among the stars. Through intervention, it had asserted itself in a galaxy that once dismissed it. Though criticism lingered, no civilization could deny Earth's decisive power. Their presence had changed the rules. In the reconstruction zones of Luminar, Earth's engineers and civilian specialists worked tirelessly alongside Luminarian survivors. Together, they began rebuilding the crystal towers that once touched the clouds. These were not just structures of steel and stone, they were symbols of defiance, hope, and recovery. Earth's contribution had moved beyond warfare. It had become a partner in cultural restoration, aiding in the revival of Luminar's heritage and the technology nearly lost in the fire of war. Ambassador Tella stood on a high terrace, overlooking the rebuilding capital. Where once smoke choked the skies, cranes now hoisted beams of light. She saw children laughing again, the elderly walking without fear. She knew that without Earth's intervention, Luminar would have been a footnote in galactic history extinguished. But now, the future had returned to her people. Still, questions lingered in her mind. Would Luminar enjoy peace at last? Or would another threat emerge in the shadows of space? For now, though, she found comfort in Earth's presence, not just as a savior, but as an enduring ally. They had not only saved Luminar, they had given them a future worth rebuilding. Yet the consequences of Earth's triumph stretched far beyond the edges of Luminar's atmosphere. The galaxy itself was shifting. The Galactic Assembly, whether it welcomed the change or not, had been forced to confront a new truth. Humanity was no longer the underestimated species from a distant world. Earth had proven it could not only survive galactic conflict, it could master it. And that realization rippled through every star-faring nation in the Assembly. Nations such as Iridian, Trell, and Novanance, indifferent to Earth's ambitions, were now reconsidering their diplomatic stances. Offers of collaboration and technological exchange flowed toward Earth. More significantly, proposals emerged inviting Earth to participate in galaxy-wide defense alliances, something unthinkable only weeks prior. This recognition wasn't just strategic, it was a signal of respect. But along with respect came responsibility. Earth's rise meant more than influence, it meant obligation. Humanity was no longer just protecting its own. It had become, by example and by choice, a guardian of the vulnerable, a protector of justice. Earth had become more than a planet, it had become a principle. And across the galaxy, that principle had a profound effect. Small, isolated civilizations that had long lived in fear now found hope. Planets that had hidden from galactic bullies looked to Earth not as a conqueror, but as a shield. The rescue of Luminar had sent a clear message. The forgotten would no longer be left to die in silence. Earth had not asked for dominion, it had earned trust. In the great halls of the Galactic Assembly, leaders took note. For generations, they had played their political games, calculated power based on age-old treaties and technological superiority. But now, they faced a new reality. If they continued to see Earth through the lens of old assumptions, they risked losing their grip on the future. Earth could no longer be sidelined, nor manipulated. The very same planet once dismissed as naive had become the wild card capable of disrupting galactic balance with intelligence, unity, and conviction. Yet, even as Earth was praised, it did not boast. Admiral Reed declined public celebrations. Ambassador Thomas spoke with humility. The Black Hawks disappeared into silent debriefing. Earth had made its statement, and now it prepared for what came next. Because they knew that in every victory lies a burden. And Earth now carried the weight of expectation. The galaxy watched, uncertain and hopeful. Would Earth choose expansion or protection? Would it become the very empire it had fought against her? Something different, something new. On Luminar, as the sun set behind partially rebuilt spires, Ambassador Tella whispered a truth she knew would echo across worlds. They didn't just fight for us. They fought for everyone still too afraid to raise their voice. And so, the war ended. But the legend of Earth was just beginning. In the wake of its decisive victory and newfound recognition across the stars, Earth stepped into a new era and age, not defined solely by military power, but by its political presence and diplomatic influence. Everything had changed since humanity first faced the unimaginable on the galactic stage. No longer just an obscure species inhabiting a small blue world, humanity had become a force capable of altering the fate of entire civilizations. In the chambers of the Galactic Assembly, the tone had shifted. Where there was once dismissiveness, there was now respect, if not a measure of wary reverence. Earth was no longer viewed as weak. It had demonstrated not only the ability to fight, but the will to protect. And more than that, it had shown that it would not turn away when injustice rose. With this power, however, came serious questions about the future Earth was now expected to help shape. The first and most pressing question was this: how would Earth maintain peace and safeguard the vulnerable without becoming entangled in endless galactic wars? Already, several civilizations had begun to view Earth as a protector. Some came forward seeking political and military defense agreements. Among them was Luminar, grateful and rebuilding now formally requesting a long-term protective alliance to ensure they would never fall victim to tyranny again. To honor this commitment, Earth began establishing a permanent base on Luminar. Not just a symbol of strength, the outpost was a promise proof that Earth's involvement was not fleeting, not performative. It was rooted in real responsibility, in an enduring pledge to protect what it had helped preserve. Back in Earth's highest-level security meetings, Admiral Reed addressed the Council with the gravity of someone who knew history was still being written. "We can't go back to the way things were," Reed said, his tone steady. "The decisions we make now will echo across the galaxy. We didn't come to Luminar simply to rescue, we came to stand for something. Peace isn't passive. It requires strength and the will to act when others hesitate." He paused, eyes scanning the room. "Now is the time for Earth to decide. Will we stand only for ourselves, sir? For those who cannot stand alone?" It was true. Earth had emerged victorious in a great war, but now came the greater trial: how to wield that power wisely. Earth could no longer afford to observe from the sidelines. The time had come to shoulder a new burden, not just to survive, but to uphold peace, equity, and freedom throughout the stars. But how could humanity achieve this without becoming entangled in every distant war, every plea for intervention? Could Earth stay true to its values without being consumed by conflict? What made this transformation even more profound was not simply military or diplomatic expansion, it was internal. Earth's people had changed. They were no longer merely survivors of their own violent past. They had become protectors, symbols, a civilization shaped by chaos, now shaping the peace of others. Once dismissed as primitive and underdeveloped, Earth had become the very definition of resilience. Its rise served as a beacon for other struggling worlds. It wasn't perfection that gave Earth its power, it was perseverance. And yet, perhaps the most important question Earth now faced was not about politics or war, it was about justice. Would Earth continue as a peaceful shield for others? Or would the galaxy, with its endless crises and tensions, eventually drag humanity into the same cycle of domination it once resisted? Ambassador Thomas stood once more before the Galactic Assembly in a defining addressone that would set the tone for Earth's role in the galaxy moving forward. "Earth does not seek power," he began, calm and unwavering. "We do not wish to dominate others. What we want is to protect what we believe in. We want to ensure fairness between civilizations. We will defend the innocent no matter who they are, no matter where they come from. And we will not allow invaders to trample the freedom of any sovereign world." The words rang through the chamber like a vow. It wasn't a warning, it was a commitment. Earth had outgrown the identity of the protected. It had become the protector. And yet, the final question still lingered in the minds of many. Could Earth maintain its role as peacekeeper without becoming just another wielder of unchecked power? Could it truly balance strength with fairness, security with compassion? Only time would answer that. But for now, one thing was clear. Earth had not only survived its introduction to the galaxy, it had redefined it. And in doing so, it had let go of its past. Not by forgetting its pain, but by transforming it into purpose.